All right, it is noon on November 29th, and we're going to get started with our P&A Senate seminar series. I do see our participant number kind of spiking regularly, so welcome to all of those who are signing on as we get started here. So on the background slide right now, you kind of see our welcome to the P&A Senate seminar series. We have some basic etiquette. We ask that you include your questions in the Q&A. You can upvote stuff and ask anonymously there. We will be recording the session. We'll take questions at the end of the session. Registrants will receive a link and to the recording and some of the notes. We also usually share it out to the Senate site and in the P&A newsletter. So welcome everyone and thank you for attending this P&A Senate event today. This is brought to you by the Professional Development Enrichment Subcommittee. My name is Angela Vetch and I'm a co-chair of the PD&E Subcommittee and I'm a P&A Senator representing the UM Morris campus. Also, I want to make a shout out to some colleagues who are on this call also as panelists. Troy and Christy are helping support this webinar for us today, doing stuff behind the scenes. We are delighted to have such a great turnout for this virtual event. I want to thank you all so much for taking time in your day to come to this session. Today, our seminar series is titled Crucial Conversations. It's a really useful topic as we sort of dive into how to have important conversations. But enough of me talking about those things. You're going to want to hear from our speakers. So today we are lucky to have Barb Daiker, who is also a PD&E subcommittee member. So shout out for Senate work. Barb is the department administrator in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at the University of Minnesota Medical School. Thank you so much, Barb, for joining us. And without further ado, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Angela. Welcome, everybody. And I'm so excited that there's an interest in this topic. Today, I'm going to be giving you kind of a taste of Crucial Conversations. There is a larger set of tools and information that's out there. And so my intention today is to give you some of the preliminary information that, from my perspective, has helped me, even without doing all of the other tools, to have those difficult conversations. So let me ground this a little bit as to why I teach Crucial Conversations. So in the Department of Psychiatry, our department head, Sofia Vinogradov, had exposure to Crucial Conversations when she was at the University of California, San Francisco. And in having training on Crucial Conversations out at UCSF, they were able to build trust, to build information, the ability to navigate difficult conversations in a way that helped them advance the work that they were doing. So when she joined the University of Minnesota, she wanted to bring those tools to us. And so we launched in the department in 2019 an across the board training for faculty, staff, learners to understand how to navigate Crucial Conversations. Subsequent to that, 4 of us in the department have gone on to become trainers in Crucial Conversations. So I am one of those. And so we offer to our department on a regular basis the full-blown training on Crucial Conversations. Today, you're not getting the full-blown training, but you're getting a sampling of some early skills that are taught in Crucial Conversations that I find are particularly helpful in getting going. So before I kind of launch into the content, I'm going to share with you the book. It's called Crucial Conversation: Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High. It's a pretty available book. You can get it at the library. You can get e-copies. And a lot of the content that I'm talking about today is in there plus more. So you can do this without having to go to a training. You can learn about it through this book, but there's also a variety of resources out there to do training on it. So just going to get that started for us. I am going to share my screen here and get us going. All right. So let's talk about what is a crucial conversation. How do you even know you have one to hold? Crucial conversations are typically conversations where you're a little bit stuck. It comes up in a variety of situations, often with opposing opinions. It's a flag if there are strong emotions attached to it. And it is also a crucial conversation when there's high stakes. Typically, you will have 2, maybe 3 of these. Only one of them may not mean it's a crucial conversation. You can have an opposing opinion and not have any strong emotions about it. I think we should go to this restaurant. You think we should go to that restaurant. It's opposing, no strong emotions, no high stakes. That not really a crucial conversation. If you get any of the other pieces attached to it, then suddenly it becomes more important and more difficult to navigate. If you feel like you're stuck, so I have been in situations where I knew that things weren't going well and I just didn't know what to do about it. You know, I knew there was a conversation that needed to be held, but I wasn't sure how to start it. I didn't know what to do about it, and nothing actually was happening. And so that is also a feeling you may have that could lead you to think that there was a crucial conversation you needed to hold, or you're trying to hold a conversation and it just never seems to go well. And that would also be an indication that something more maybe needs to happen. Unfortunately, when we're in the midst of a conversation like that, we are not often at our best. Those high stakes, that high emotion, sometimes means that we're not going to hold the conversation very well. And so it helps if we can figure out if this is a crucial conversation, because if it is, there are some tools we can use to help us navigate it more successfully. So here's a model that's used in the crucial conversations. And today we're not going to go through the whole model because that would require a full-blown training. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what we need to think about before having a conversation, and which is that part. And then we're going to end with start with heart. So we will get to this point in the conversation, and then the rest will be left for another time or another training. What this model is talking about is that if we have a crucial conversation, we may end up with either reacting by silence or which is also called verbal violence, or silence or verbal violence. And if we can create a circle of safety, and that's not necessarily physical safety, but it's also emotional safety, we can get to a point of pool of shared meaning. So if we have a conversation and we're not doing it well, or we're avoiding it, we can end up with silence or verbal violence. But if we can move to a point of safety with the person, we can have shared meaning, and that shared meaning can actually lead to a resolution. We're not going to get all the way there today. We're going to talk about getting unstuck, mastering our stories, and starting with heart. All right. So how do we characterize this conversation we need to have? We've talked about how there can be aspects of it, but there's also a pattern that we can take a look at, and they call it CPR, content, pattern, and relationship. So if you're thinking about a conversation you maybe need to have, or you think you should have, the content is the first part. What is it? What is the action? What is the activity? What is it that you're seeing? And it may be, for an example, the person who shows up late to a meeting. So that is a single instance of a problem. However, once it starts reoccurring, so this person consistently shows up late to a meeting, then you've started creating a pattern. And then if it's also impacting your relationship, then that escalates it even more. So here's an example. I'm standing in line to get a coffee and somebody cuts in front of me. It's a single instance of a problem. I don't really need to have a crucial conversation with them. I don't know them. It'll be gone shortly. Not a big deal. But if this is my person I know and they constantly cut in on me on whatever we're doing, and it's beginning to make me feel angry at them, then it is a crucial conversation. Same behavior, cutting in. But the fact that it reoccurs, and even more so, the fact that it's a relationship at stake, lends itself to be considered a crucial conversation. Often the things that we're seeing are at the top. It's like an iceberg, or it's like a dandelion, that these persistent little problems are really not the problem in as much as it is the pattern in the relationship. It's what's underneath the ground. It's that root system that is the bigger issue. The cutting in line in and of itself isn't such a big deal. What is a big deal is the pattern and relationship that is happening underneath. So anytime you find yourself stuck, think about whether it could be a crucial conversation that either you are not holding, which is silence, or not holding well, which is verbal violence. I want to remind people that sometimes we don't want to have the conversation because we think that we can't be candid and respectful at the same time, but that's considered the fool's choice. You can be both candid and respectful at the same time. So don't allow that to be the barrier to have the conversation you need to have. And then also think about CPR in terms of, is it just content? Is it just a one-time thing? Or is there a pattern or relationship that will help you also choose whether it is necessary to have a crucial conversation or not? So we're going to start with mastering your stories. So most of us, all of us really, are really quick to create a story around something. We see and hear it, and in our mind, we like in a flash will tell a story. And that story then leads us to certain feelings, and with those feelings, we take action. So here's an example. I'm driving down the freeway. I'm getting off on an exit, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, someone comes flying in front of me with their car, causing me to slam on my brakes. Immediately, I tell myself, they are a fool. They cannot drive. That somebody needs to take their driver's license away, right? That's the story I'm telling myself. What I have seen and heard is a car that cuts in front of me. I could actually tell a different story. A different story could be, oh my gosh, they must have a medical emergency. They didn't really know where they were going and realized this was their exit. If they missed it, it was good. They were going to be even later getting to wherever they needed to be for this medical emergency, right? That's a different story. If I tell that story to myself, I then feel compassion. I feel anxiety for them, that I hope they get where they need to go. And my actions are different. I back up, I give them space. I'm not going to honk at them. I'm not going to do any of those things that I might do with a different story. What we see and hear can be the same. The story we tell ourselves can be different. And it's really important for us to recognize the difference between the facts, if you will, and what we tell ourselves, because what we tell ourselves will drive our emotions. We try to figure out what's going on. We do it in a speed of light. We just, boom, we decide, we judge, which then leads us to a feeling and can lead us to actions. We tell them so quickly, we don't even notice we're doing it. And we can be our own worst enemy. We will escalate a negative story into emotions really, really fast. Like the car that cuts me off because they're a bad driver. I can be so rattled so fast, and I don't even know what's going on, but I have decided in my head what's going on, and I'm using that to fuel how I'm feeling and ultimately how I'm acting. So the key thing is to really master your story. When strong emotions are coming into play, it's not enough to just control and suppress them. We really have to think about how to create new emotions. We really have to open the door for a different story. Because if we don't open the door for a potential different story, then our emotions will continue to play out. And even if we're not saying anything, we will be giving clues to the other person about how we're feeling. So often with our stories, we are absolutely convinced that we are right, and we are reluctant to let go of them. And so that's what I was talking about. We need to be able to open the door to change the story so that we can create new emotions that can bring us to a healthy dialogue. If I think this other person is trying to wreak havoc in my work world, then it's very difficult for me to interact with them on a particular topic having that run through my head somehow or another. I have to be willing to let go of that story and be able to have the door open for something else. So the first step in being able to master the story is really clearly separating facts from your story. So in the story of my exiting on the freeway, I mentioned that the facts were, I'm exiting, they're going fast, they cut in front of me, I have to brake. Those are the facts. Anything else that comes out of it is just my story, because I don't really know what's going on with them. So you need to be able to be clear what it is what are the facts. So here's another story. I had a faculty member who took a microscope and moved it to another department. And then I was presented with this problem. So the story I started out with in my head was, they don't care that this is making a big mess for me to clean up, and I'm going to have to try to figure out what to do now, which made me angry, right? Why would they do that? But the facts were that they moved the microscope. I don't really know why they moved it at that point. It wasn't clear that they were actually expecting me to do anything. Maybe they didn't even know there was something to do, but I had a story in my head that I needed to separate from the facts in order to help me get some clarity about what needed to take place. The thing is that we often believe that the stories we tell ourselves are facts. If we can figure out how to separate the facts from the stories, you could realize that there are so many stories that could be told with those same facts. Just as I was giving you the example of the person on the exit, there are many more than just the two that I said. Any number of things could be happening. So if we can give up that certainty that our story is the only explanation, it allows us to create new emotions and can lead us to a conversation or a dialogue. Sometimes we tell ourselves stories to help us make us feel good about the things we are doing that could ruin a relationship. And in the within a crucial conversation, they call those clever stories. These are stories that we will tell ourselves in order to keep this relationship the way it is. The three stories that they highlight are called a victim story, where it's not my fault, I'm not contributing to this, it's somebody else's problem. I'm just here and it's happening and it's not my fault. The villain story is it's all your fault. You're the one that has these nasty qualities. You're the one that is doing all these things, and it creates ugly labels. And then the last is the helpless story. And I think here at the university, that comes up a lot. It's like, there's nothing else I can do. It's a university policy. I can't do anything about it. They're a faculty member. They have authority. I don't. That's another aspect, that these stories we may tell ourselves in one form or another allow us to just stay in a problematic conversation situation. So if you find that your story falls into the bucket of a victim story, then you can ask yourself, what is my role? In the victim story, you're saying, this is happening to me. But if we back up a little bit and say, what is my role in it, we can potentially think about how maybe it isn't a victim story. In the villain story, I think it's also really critical to think about, would a reasonable, rational, decent person actually do this? If I'm calling you a villain because I'm saying, that behavior that you have is because you are evil and you really want me to suffer, it's like, would a reasonable, rational, decent person really do that? And if not, then it's really not that story. And then the helpless story, which again, I think happens a lot at the university. If I can't do anything about this because this is being imposed on me, then the right question to ask is, what should I do now to move toward what I really want? The idea that even with the policies, even with the regard to how the university works or any place else, there is usually something I can do. And really, what is that? And how can I implement that moving forward? It may not be exactly what ideally I would like, but I'm sure there's something I can do. So the big ideas are that we need to separate facts from stories so that we can open our mind to potential alternative stories that allow us to kind of neutralize how we're feeling about it. And that if we are using those clever stories in order to stay stuck in this, that we really need to ask ourselves some questions that can help us modify what's going on. And honestly, separating facts and getting a handle on the story I'm telling myself is often all that I need to do in order to begin to have a crucial conversation. Now, there are lots of other tools, and we'll talk about a few more, but just doing that can make a big difference in terms of how we're dealing with the situation. So we've separated the facts, we've gotten our story clarified, and now we need to really focus on what we want. So in this model, we've talked about this, and now we're going to move over here. And this is where we begin the conversation. Before is how we kind of get oriented to have it, and this is where we start the conversation with somebody. We talked a little bit about the emotions and how even if we remain silent, it's not good enough, because even with that, if we have these strong emotions towards somebody or towards a group, eventually what we're thinking or feeling is going to come out, and it will impact the conversation. Our nonverbals are really, really powerful, and it's very difficult, even if somebody is more like an actor than others, to prevent the other person from at least a little bit sensing that things are not okay. So we really need to get our hands around what we're thinking and what we're feeling about this. So we're not actually going to do the chat, but I wanted to show you the difference between intentions, if intentions are unhelpful or if intentions are helpful. Unhelpful intentions are if we have to be right, or if we want to look good, or if we have to win, when we're trying to punish or blame, if we're trying to avoid a conflict or be comfortable or take control. If my intention is any one of these on the list, it's not going to be particularly helpful in having a conversation with somebody. However, if my intention is to find the truth, to learn, to come to a win-win situation, secure long-term results, or strengthen relationships, if any of those are my intention in the conversation, we're going to have a higher degree of success. And the reason is, again, if the person I'm talking to reads through my behavior, my words, to what I'm intending, if they read through it and it's the one on the left, they're not going to engage with me very well. But if it's on the right, if I share my intention to find the truth or to learn or to find a winning situation, that will come through as well. And it can help immensely in trying to get to some resolution. If we think about what falls apart first, it typically isn't our behavior, but it will happen. More likely it is our intent. So we really need to be clear with both ourselves and others about what we really want. And that is stating, and we do that through stating our intention. So we've talked about identifying the facts. We've talked about mastering our stories. The third part, which is what we're talking about right now, is what do I really want? What do I want for me? What do I want for the other person, for the relationship, for the organization? So let's go back to the example about the microscope. So this faculty member moved the microscope, and I had to get clarity in my own head about what was my intention. So as I sat with that a little bit, I came to the realization that I really wanted a long-term relationship with this faculty member. It wasn't going to do any good for me or them or the department if we had kind of a blow up over it. So I was really clear, I really wanted to maintain that relationship. And with that in mind, then, I could better come into the conversation with her about what happened, and how can I help, and how might we do this together? And it allowed me to not only be able to open up the possibility of what might have happened, a story that I didn't know, but it also allowed me to hear from her what she was looking for as well. And it made a world of difference. What I learned is that she had no idea that transferring assets had policies and procedures behind it. And she thought of the microscope as hers, right? Which sometimes faculty do. It was bought under grants that she secured. And so she thought the microscope was hers to do with as she wished, which was to transfer it to another department. So that was clarifying. I was able to understand why she did what she did, and we could back into then now what can we do about that, right? And help her understand too that the assets of the university are something that, yes, she helped secure it, but it still belongs to the U, and we need to follow protocols on what we do with it once it's here. So I'm sharing my good intention. My good intention with her, I said explicitly, I said to the faculty member, I'm really, having a relationship with you is really important to me. And I want to make sure that we can navigate through this and maintain a relationship. And by sharing that explicitly, it helps bring down her defensiveness. It helps bring down anyone's defensiveness if you share it right away. I'm on a board of directors for an arts group, and there was a brouhaha that happened just in the last couple of weeks. And there was a need for somebody to go and talk with some team members to better understand what was going on. Knowing that I was a bit of an outsider, although on the board, but don't really know them, it was crucial for me to share right up front with them what my intention was. My intention for them in these separate conversations was, I want you to be happy. I want you to be successful in your role. I want to learn from whatever it is that has happened here. That's my intention for this conversation. And it allows them to then know that I'm not coming in to try and find fault or judgment. This is why I'm here, and this is my intention for them. And it makes a difference. Sometimes you might have to go at it a couple times if indeed it's difficult. So here's a video that can share with you what good intention might sound like. A couple of different examples of people just sharing their good intent, and then think about what it would feel like for you if somebody came up and said this to you.
Hey, do you have a minute to touch base on the Praxis project? I have a few ideas that I think might lighten our workload, and I wanted to share them with you.
I have some feedback on the new candidate from the marketing group. Of course, it's your call. I just wanted you to be aware of my concerns as you consider your decision.
Well, first of all, I want you to know that I think you are doing a really nice job in your role. I also want to see you grow in this department and have the success you want to have. And I'd like to share some ideas with you that I believe will help you do that.
Hey, I was hoping we could talk. Something has been bothering me. And I know that if we could look at it together, we could figure it out before it turns into a bigger deal.
So as you can see from the Hi, did I jump out there for a second?
It did. Everything froze, but you are back now. And if you want to
Good.
start screen sharing again, I think we will, yeah, be ready to dive in.
Great. I will go back to my sharing. I don't know what happened there, but okay. Did you see the video? Did it go all the way through?
Yep, it had just finished. I think that's when you froze.
Perfect. Okay. So as you could tell from the very last clip of this video, it doesn't only apply to what might happen at work. These are conversations you can have at home. They're particularly helpful with teenagers, I have to say. I had some of these, if I had had some of these skills under my belt when my daughter was a teenager, I think maybe things would have gone a little bit better. It's great now, but at the time it seemed pretty stressful. So it's a chance to think about what you want to say and how you want to say it with your intentions clear, so that the other person knows you're not coming after them. You're not trying to have a row or any kind of argument. Rather, you really do care about them and you want to find a solution for whatever it is that you're talking about. So as I mentioned, the first thing that deteriorates is not really our behavior, but our intentions. And at a crucial moment, we need to ask ourselves, what do I really want? And we need to try to keep ourselves focused on that good intention. We need to help the other person see that we care about them at whatever level that makes sense, and to share that good intention. Now, one of the topics that keeps coming up in our department has to do with hierarchy, that having this kind of conversation with your coworker or maybe someone from another department doesn't feel quite as risky as it is to potentially do it with somebody who's considered higher in the organization, whether it's your supervisor or a PI or anybody else in that regard. However, I have found that yes, I might prepare a little bit more if it's a hierarchical conversation, but the tools still work. And it has led to some really successful conversations about relationships and workload and other kinds of things. If I start with, again, understanding the facts, getting the story clear, and then beginning with my intention. If we start there, we're more likely to have success. And I'm going to tell you that sometimes you have to go at some conversations more than once. It isn't like it's a one and done. It may be that the other person wasn't quite there with you yet and you have to try again. It might be that maybe I didn't have the clarity that I needed to when I went into it and I need to try it again. It's rare, I think, that having a crucial conversation of this type makes matters worse. It may not accomplish everything that you're looking for. You might have to try again, but I've not seen that it makes matters worse. So you've only got an upside potential with it. At least in my experience, that's the case. All right, so I am going to stop sharing now. Oh, there we are. And I want to get a sense of where we are with questions.
Yeah, sounds good. So one of the questions that's been upvoted the most is, are you able to give an example of how you can have crucial conversations while discussing politics and/or topics related to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Yes, those are big, big topics. Okay, so at least when it comes to politics, when you think about the triangle, about where you've got opposing opinions, you've got high emotions, and you have a relationship, if you can disconnect the opposing opinions from the relationship and high emotions, you have a greater chance of success. What causes these conversations about politics to deteriorate is when we're linking it to the relationship, or we are linking it to high emotions. If we can know that we might agree to disagree, we can share facts, and then we can agree to disagree, then you're less likely to even need a crucial conversation on it. I have seen, and I have been in situations where my emotions get kind of whipped up relative to the politics. And if I can disconnect that, if I can have a conversation about the facts, and then also about what those facts mean to me, I can sometimes hold those emotions at bay. The interesting thing about DEI kinds of conversations is the willingness to be open that what I understand to be true or what I am interpreting, there may be other stories to tell about it. Because I think coming from, white female privilege, I think I know because, right? That's what culture says. I'm supposed to know. If I can open myself to the idea that I don't know and have a conversation with somebody to hear what their experience is, to understand how perhaps what is going on elsewhere that I have not experienced is true for others, then that allows us to be open to to what others are bringing to the table. It's challenging because, again, these stories happen so fast in our heads. I think that what my experience is universal for everyone else, and clearly that is not the case. So I call it being humble to the idea that I don't know everything, right? Being open to the idea that you can share something with me that will help me see your experience, then that allows us to come to dialogue about things that we might not otherwise. Not easy, but.
Thank you, Barb. So actually, I think someone means this maybe as a follow-up question. So instead of asking the next most highest one, I'm actually going to ask a question that just sort of popped in, if you're willing.
Sure.
What if the other person in a political conversation just can't or won't separate the relationship from the political discussion?
Yeah. So you have to, there are lots of other tools in crucial conversations. So when something gets particularly complicated, there are other tools that are in the book and in the training that you can apply to the situation. It comes into this idea of safety. And I know we often think of safety as physical safety, but there's also an emotional safety or relationship safety aspect to it. And if someone is still coming in with really high emotions and driving something, to me, based on this training, it says to me that they're not feeling safe. They are driving it too hard. When you see emotions that are a bit over the top or are out of alignment with what you would expect or what you're trying to bring to it, that says to me that they're not feeling safe. And so then there are other tools and skills that come into play to help them create a sense of safety so that you can have the conversation. I'm not saying you can always have a conversation with somebody. I'm not saying that at all. But if there is a possibility for it, then helping to create a sense of safety for them so that you can actually get to understand what is this meaning to them. They are telling themselves a story also, and putting into the conversation the story that they're telling can be super enlightening to you to hear. Why are they holding so hard to this idea? What is it? What does it mean to them? And if we can get to a point where they're willing to share that's that sense of safety, then there can be an aha moment in it. Maybe.
Great, thank you. So another question that got a few different upvotes is someone asking, it's one thing to know that I need to stop and consider just the facts, and it's another to actually do it, especially if my emotions are clouding the facts. Any tips on how to actually get oneself to pause and compile the facts successfully?
Oh, yes. You know, for me, that was kind of my first hurdle, is to really understand what are the facts. So when I went through nursing school, one of the things that we had to do was this SOAP charting, you know, subjective, objective type stuff. The objective is what you're getting after. In other words, what did I see, smell, hear, feel? Focus on that, because those are your facts, if you will. He said blah blah blah, those exact words, you know, it's kind of a quote. She showed up at 5 minutes after the meeting started for the last 3 meetings. Facts. So if you can zero in on what you can see, hear, smell, taste, whatever, all the senses, then that will help you zero in on what the facts are. And think about them in terms of like numbers too. How many times when did they do this, so that you can be really clear. Sharing with somebody the facts is helpful as well. So if I'm going into a conversation with somebody who has had a repeated cycle, a pattern in the CPR vernacular, a pattern of behavior, it helps if I come into it saying, hey, our last 3 meetings, you showed up 5 minutes late and didn't have the materials that we talked about readily available to you. What that says to me is that you're not taking this meeting seriously, but I want to hear from you. What's going on with you? Again, opening the door that they can tell me. I'm sharing my story. My story is this, but I'm opening the door to hear from them. What is their story?
Sounds good. All right, we have a couple more questions queued up in the Q&A. So some folks are saying it is hard, like when folks want to argue or disagree with the facts. That's just something that's kind of just acknowledged in the Q&A. One of the next questions that come up is, what if you have advocated consistently across years, working with a range of folks to make change, and the evidence suggests that you are truly helpless? And they have a parenthetical, maybe that's a sign to leave.
Well, again, I think you have to think about, what are you trying to accomplish, right? And then with that, are there any steps you can take towards that end? If indeed the end goal is the most important thing to you, and taking those steps can't get you close enough, then you have to make other considerations. But if making some progress is important and feels worthwhile, then you have to figure out what those steps are. I think being in the medical school and dealing with the whole Fairview thing and all of that, there's a lot of situations where you feel like we're stuck. It's not we can't do anything. We're completely stuck. But I have found that there is usually something that is still within my power, or still within my team's power to do, that we can do. We can educate ourselves. We can create clear policies for ourselves. We can take things a little bit farther along, and that sometimes is enough. If it isn't, then you need to think about that too, because you're right. There's going to be barriers no matter what. If I want to be able to jump countries without dealing with passport control, that's just not a thing. I'm still going to have to deal with passport control, but I might be able to make progress in terms of how I deal with it through other ways, like how do I get ready for it? And it's kind of a tangential question because I was just near Canada, but anyway.
Oh, sounds great. Thanks, Barb. So another question that came in was, how do we know, and this was a little earlier in the presentation or conversation, so we may have to ask for a little more context, and I can allow folks to unmute if necessary, but how do you know that it is the right time to proceed? What should we look for after sharing our intent? And then there is a related question afterwards. Would you like me to read that now or give you a second to reply?
So give me a second to reply, and then we can read the second part. So I've started you down the path with this. The next step is to ask for their story, right? So I've shared my intentions. And And they may or may not share anything back with me at that point. So I'm sharing with you my intentions, and then I will give you kind of the facts and the story that I have and ask you to share the same. By doing that, sometimes people will share their intentions as well. Sometimes, most of the time they don't. I think the process of sharing my intention is to help create that circle of safety for them so that they don't move to silence or verbal violence in the course of this conversation. So they likely may not share their intention with me, but by me sharing it with them, it opens the door for further conversation. And what's the follow-up on that?
Yeah, so related to this, could you share more insights about agency and positionality in connection with minority or BICOP people who may not have the agency or lack positionality to engage in critical conversations?
Yes, that is very similar to the discussion about hierarchy, where people are either by structure placed in higher positions or have agency in higher positions. This still works. It does require us to put our heads into a space where we can, let me say that differently. We need to feel safe going into the conversation as well. I think that's part of it. So if in the situation the other person has higher agency, I'm the one bringing up, I don't have higher agency, I'm bringing it up. I do have to have a certain amount of safety in that conversation. And so that safety might involve, thinking about what I would like to have happen. What is my intention? How is it important to do this? It could also be maybe bringing someone with you too. That's not out of the question. It's not as though these conversations have to be held just one-on-one, although many are. But there have been times when people felt as though they needed someone there with them in order to help provide that additional level of safety in the conversation. Again, not physical safety, but the position of agency can cause people to feel threatened, whether it's because you are a supervisor and you have the ability to control what happens to my job, or whether it is somebody with higher agency and you can make things more difficult or not as positive for me. So it does work. It does work. But like I said, sometimes you need to have a little reinforcement to go with you.
Right, great, thank you. So we have one question left in the queue, and it just said it would be great to get some of the starters from the video for starting that crucial conversation. And I think you've already mentioned some of the additional resources available through the book and things like that. And we'll be sharing a recording of this as well as kind of a summary of some of the different things. So I don't know if you have more to add to that. We've actually answered our Q&A queue, so I'll see if more questions come in, or if you have anything else you'd like to review, Barb. Otherwise, at 12:50, I'll work on closing the presentation.
Yeah, the book has many, many examples, and it also takes you beyond what I talked about today. The courses that are available. So Vital Smarts is the company that offers trainings and courses and things like that. And Vital Smarts has some online trainings that you can do. As I said, we did some train the trainer here in our department, so we offer it as well within our department. And within both the trainings as well as the book, there are many examples. And there's even a chapter in the book called "Yeah, but." So it's in the context of, yeah, that's all good and fine, but my situation doesn't apply, right? And so there's a fair number of examples in there too of how it can help. Again, this is not a cure-all, end-all for anything, but it is a way I have found for me to begin to unlock a conversation that either has been very difficult or causing me to have emotions. I had a situation happen this was probably about 6 months ago, where I had somebody kind of out of the blue call me a bully at work, which I was like shocked and dismayed and mad. And so I had to have a crucial conversation with this person. I had to it's a relationship that I needed to manage. I needed to maintain. It was important to the department and important to me to have an ongoing relationship. And so it took me quite a while to kind of unpack my intentions toward it. Now it seems easy, it's now that I've kind of unpacked it, but it took me a while. I couldn't approach it right away. I needed time and space to kind of settle down and get my intentions straight and be able to figure out how to open that conversation. And it worked. And, but it was challenging. But I felt like I had support. I did talk with my coworkers about it a bit in order to help me get my head in the right space and be able to navigate it. But I'm glad for it. This person will never be my best friend. I can tell you that. That's just not going to happen. But we can have productive business conversations now, whereas before I was either going to silence or verbal violence. I could see that. I was doing that. I was maybe being a little bit more difficult in meetings than I needed to be. That was the verbal violence piece, or the silence was, I'm just checking out. I'm not in the conversation. So now we can have conversations.
Thank you. And do you think we have time for one more question?
Yes.
All right, awesome. I had one more come in. So how would you recommend we avoid having our efforts of initiating crucial conversations being taken advantage of? It seems these conversations require some level of vulnerability, but you've mentioned safety a bit as well. Could you just elaborate on how we can create safety for ourselves as well without being taken advantage of?
Yeah. So I think one of the things is that our sharing our intention does create a certain sense of vulnerability, but you're not revealing deep, dark secrets. You're not taking somebody into the well of your past childhood despair or anything like that. So it is about being able to say, my intention for you, and if you take it to like personal relationships too, which maybe there is some vulnerability in that too, is to just really be clear and centered on what is your intention and being open to the idea of what they're going to share. Now, if they lash out, if they are not taking you at your word that this is your intention, then you can back out. It's not like you have to proceed. And whether that means you try again at another time, or if that means you just walk away because it's not something that you can do, that's okay too. We have all probably had a work relationship where we just needed to walk away. It just wasn't going to work, and that's okay too. But most of the time, there's an opportunity to have the relationship and to walk through our intentions and to come up with an action plan, which is the part we haven't gotten to that, but get to an action plan that works for both of us.
All right. So one of the follow-ups to that was, could we also overtly say, before we check in, I hope we can keep this conversation between us. Do you agree?
Of course.
That was a quote. So.
Yes, of course. Yeah. This doesn't prescribe whether or not somebody shares it. But you have to be aware, though, that even if you ask that and somebody says yes, that, what they actually do with it later, you are taking them at their word. There's a trust level that has to be there. But yeah, again, not necessarily sharing deep, dark secrets. That's not what this is about. This is about dealing with these interpersonal conflict relationship things that come up.
Sounds good. Thanks. So one more kind of question rolled in, and I think we'll take I think it's a quick one, hopefully, that we can answer, and then I'll go ahead and wrap things up. But it says, if we have time, I'd love to hear a little more about the cultural context of Minnesota and how it informs these conversations. So how things are read as passive aggressive, for example.
Yeah. See, and I think that is perfect example of how our intentions come through when we're not saying them out loud. We read that somebody is upset, but they're not saying it. So it's a problem, whether it's considered the Minnesota issue or whether it's any other kind of issue, that we're thinking things in our head, stories we're telling ourselves, which leads to our behavior, subtle or not so subtle. And so that can be a fact brought to the table. You said you were okay with it, and then I saw you shaking your head no and writing with very forceful letters. In my mind, you don't agree, right? So, you can use it that way too. Again, focusing on the facts. What is the story that I'm telling myself? Invite them to bring their story into the scenario.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Well, I think with that, we will go ahead and be closing today's webinar. Thank you so much to everyone who attended. And on behalf of P&A Senate and the PD&E Subcommittee, I'd like to thank you, Barb, for presenting with us today. I think this is a really helpful topic. It helps to reframe and think about the conversations that we're having in different environments. So thank you, thank you. For those attending, a recording will be sent later, as well as kind of a summary of the different things talked about. Please consider participating in Senate governance things. Your voice matters, your representation matters. If you'd like to learn more about Senate governance, please make sure to head to the University Senate website and check that out. I'll make sure to get the link in the chat in a second here. And we value your feedback and participation in these events. This is how these events come about, is we hear from other folks what they're interested in learning about. So we'll send a follow-up evaluation. If you could complete that, that would be great. Thank you so much to everyone for attending, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.